Welcome everybody, I'm Amy from Earthset. Today we are at Blue Garage in Lewisham. Now Blue Garage is a fantastic makerspace and innovation hub in South London. So we thought this was the ideal place to have the finale of Earthset Build. So Earthset Build is something that's been running for the last 2 months, all about helping founders do things for their business. But today we're having our first and final meeting in person in Blue Garage, where we're getting all those wonderful founders to come together, meet lots of exciting mentors, and have a session where they learn how to do things even better. We're going to have a fine finale, we're all going to meet each other, and we're going to have a big pitch session at the end where people can tell everybody about their fantastic companies. And as you all know, because I think lots of you came, the reason why we're here today is that we have three main people who we want to work for at Earthset. When we kind of try and create a climate community, we've got our investors, we've got founders and policymakers. So this particular event, this series, was designed very much for our founder community, part of the community. And what we wanted to have is thinking about all the wonderful people who come to us who can help founders to try and say, listen, we'll give you a venue, an outlet, so you can give the advice that you'd normally give to some of the Earthsetters, and hopefully that's of a beneficial nature to our founders. So that is basically why we're here today. And so thank you all very much for taking part. But we thought that Blue Garage would be the perfect space. I really like to thank both Ben and Michael for hosting us today. Really kind of them. But also because I think it's quite inspirational. It's a fantastic space, as you can see, and it's huge. It's got a loading bay. It's got fantastic equipment. It's got lots of offices. It's got lots of inspirational people who are doing cool things. And obviously, when you are working on a startup, the idea that you're surrounded by other people and have some energy behind you is really, really important. So please, when we go on our tour, look around all the spaces, be inspired, and obviously think of all the things you want to make with the fantastic equipment. But first off, though, the person who can probably give the most advice out of anybody in the world is my co-founder, Fiona Howarth, who you all know as my co-founder, but as the founder and director of Octopus Electric Vehicles, who is the ultimate founder, because I think your founder story is quite incredible about what you've done so far with the company. So I thought we'd use Fiona and talk to her about what she did and how she built the company before, as kind of an inspiration to set us off for the afternoon. And then at the end of this, we'll just go through a few things that we're going to actually do this afternoon after we've spoken. But I'm going to kick off now with talking to you, if that's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Amy. Hello, everyone. You set the bar quite high there. I feel quite a bit of pressure to deliver for our fantastic, community here, both, in person and online. But yeah, sure. Fire away, Amy. What do you want to?
So when did you? Tell us a bit about the origin story of Octopus Electric Vehicles. When did you start? How did you get into it? What was there when you began, or was there nothing? This has the very, very first day in the office kind of scenario.
Well, I tell you what, my story started a long time before Octopus, in terms of a kind of passion for renewables and a passion for cars, and how you might be able to bring the energy transition to the transport space. But then also a few years after that, so I actually spent some time. Actually, when I said I was going to do electric cars when I was basically about 20 years old, they were like, no, it's not electric cars, it's going to be hydrogen fuel cells. So then I went to work for BMW designing hydrogen cars in Germany. And then I went to investigate, and I was like, there's a lot of things, hydrogen may come at some point, but there's a lot of problems with that. Electric cars will come first. And then, and I wanted to help commercialize that technology. So I did a bunch of other things. And I also ended up doing a secondment at government at one point, at DEC, as it was, the Department of Energy and Climate Change, which is now DESNZ. So when I was there, we were doing electricity market reform, and we were looking at the renewable energy that was going to be hitting the grid. And we also were like, how are we going to store all this renewable energy? Because it's going to be green and abundant, but it's not going to generate when we most want to use it. And then I realized, and others pointed out, we were going to have cars on our driveways with batteries, and they were going to roll out at pace. And so actually we're going to have a battery on like everybody's driveway and on street corners and in depots. And you're like, well, that's really fantastic. We can store that renewable energy in those car batteries. So that kind of got me inspired to think about how we can start to then play tunes on a renewable energy system, where you're going to have intermittent supply, but you're going to have flexible energy demand. So I did various other things like Hive by British Gas. And when Greg Jackson, the group CEO of Octopus Energy, was setting up Octopus, he was like, do you want to come and join me? At the time, actually, I said no. first of all, I wanted to have another kid and not be in a high-paced startup. But the second time around, he's like, we're going to do stuff with electric cars. Do you want to do that? And so I joined basically to do stuff with electric cars. So he's like, well, what would you like to do? And so that was the kind of the very start. And I was like, I really want to help, electric car drivers get everything really great from the energy system. So make Octopus the energy company for EV drivers. But also, how do you help people really discover electric cars and get great advice and expertise when they're making that decision? What I found was that if you went into a dealership, you'd get lots of different information, which may or may not be correct. So actually, when I went in, there was a dealership, they sent the new guy out because they thought electric cars was funny. And then he didn't have a brochure. He printed out the brochure. We sat down. He's like, I think that's that colour over there. And then he's like, and I think it's going to take you 28 and a half hours to charge that car. And I was like, well, that's just nonsense. Like, the information was so inaccurate. And then a few weeks later, he sent me a video of the Nissan Leaf, as it was at the time. And he said, and there's a charging station at every petrol station, which was also total nonsense, but in the other way. So now we've gone from something being very negative, a reason why not to make that switch to EVs, to something really positive where they're telling me there's a charge point everywhere, which was also setting incorrect expectations. So I was like, what if people do want to make the change? Where do they get that information? So we set up the kind of go-to place to get everything electric. We had independent, impartial experts. We could help get you funding. We could get you a charge point at your house. We could get you an energy tariff where you could charge up in the middle of the night for a low cost. You can save like 90% versus petrol. And if you didn't have that, we've set up a whole roaming platform over public charging to be able to access over 1 million chargers across Europe with one app and one charge card.
So this was before the leasing business. This is all the informational backbone.
We put all of that together and we were working on loads of different bits. And we'll go back to the start of the journey. But essentially, what we found when we were doing the leasing part, we were broking for other leasing companies. And actually, I was like the sister company to Octopus Energy, which was like the most beautiful kind of level of customer service people had ever received. And when I was broking for other leasing companies, I just could not replicate that level of service. Right. The service was poor, and to replicate that level of service for even 50 customers, I found that when I was on holidays with my kids, I would be triaging problems for those customers while my kids were like playing on the beach and I was watching them from the car. And I was like, this is not okay. There's only 50 customers. There's no way I can scale this and look after our customers. So we set up our own leasing company. So if people, if there were great people that we could partner with, we did it. And where we couldn't find people with the level of service we wanted, we set it up ourselves. So then we set the leasing company up during lockdown, and we launched that coming out of lockdown in 2021. But I actually started doing things with Octopus in 2017. So we had basically, in the early days, so when I arrived, Octopus, by the way, I think I was employee like 48 in the Octopus Energy Group. There's now 13,000. In fact, there's probably more than that. I kind of lose track. I kind of get updates when I hear other people speak about it across the group because it's just growing so fast. But I was, number one in doing EV things. And it was a bit like throwing spaghetti at the wall because you're like, I think, Fiona, N of 1, that people might really like cheap electricity in the night to fill up their cars. But it was like this thing where people are like, oh, it's only a few pence, right? Do people really care about kilowatt hours? Do they really care whether or not they're paying 20p or 5p because it's only pence? And we talk sometimes about the plastic bag tax. You know how when they implemented that, people were like, oh, it's only a few pence for a plastic bag. But actually overnight, it pretty much reduced plastic bag consumption by like 80 or 90%. It was phenomenal. Actually, that signal totally changed people's behavior. And so we found something similar actually with EV charging, which is people really like charging up the car, and saving, 75% on their electricity costs and versus petrol even more. So actually we started trying that. So we started trying a tariff where you could charge up in the middle of the night. It was like 4 hours. Octopus Go, Charlie Cook, who now runs Right Charge, has been to Earthset events before. He was an intern with me at the time. Wow. So actually he got in touch with me. He's like, Fiona, I'd like to work on climate change stuff. Do you have any jobs? And I'm like, sure, come and join. But I didn't actually have any kind of permanent jobs. I was like, I can take you on over the summer. And he was due to join an oil and gas company at the end of the summer. And I was like, come and work with me over the summer. Let's see if we can have some fun. By the end of the summer, I'd managed to get budget to secure him a permanent role. And I was like, don't go to the oil and gas company. Come and join and stay permanently. And he did. And he helped me launch that first smart EV tariff. And then we partnered with another, first we partnered with Zappy, the Zappy charger from My Energy. And then you could program that to charge up in the middle of the night when our tariff went cheap. Then you could start charging your car so you didn't have to wake up and go out and plug in. And then after that, we started doing other smart tariffs as well. There was an agile tariff that followed the wholesale market price, which actually was good for anything. It wasn't just about EVs. That was a broader kind of offering from Octopus. And then since then, there's been developments as well around Octopus Intelligent Go, where you can we can actually charge up when it's cheapest. So it's not even just a set time that it goes cheap. It's that actually you tell us what you want to be charged up by when, and we'll have the car done, say 80% by 7 a.m. in the morning. And then we make sure that we balance that. And that works both for the local grids as well as it does for the kind of wholesale market price.
But you've clearly then moved into the idea of getting all these cars to people through the salary sacrifice scheme, which was an extraordinary amount of cars now on the road. But that must have been a very costly exercise. How did you work out to scale that? Explain how the salary sacrifice went, and how did you manage to scale that many vehicles on the road? Because that's a big amount of money, I imagine.
Well, so around about 2020, the UK government dropped the company car tax rate to 0 for electric cars. And salary sacrifice is a scheme or a mechanism where you can pay for your electric car lease out of your gross salary before income tax and national insurance, so you can save 30 to 40% every month on your car costs. In fact, it's not just your car lease. You can include your insurance, your servicing and maintenance, tyres, like all this stuff goes in, breakdown recovery. In fact, your charger, we give you a free charger as part of this bundle as well. And it's one single payment out of your salary and you're saving 30 to 40% every month. What we found as well is that the number one thing putting people off getting an electric car at that point was cost. So at the time, electric cars were more expensive than their petrol and diesel counterparts. They've come down significantly since, so we're nearly at price parity. But at that time, it was £5,000 to £10,000 more expensive per car, whereas this made it cheaper on a monthly basis to go electric. So we set up basically an offering to make it really easy for the employers, because what happens is your employer has to set up the scheme and then make it available to you as an employee. So we would then make it really easy for the employer to set it up, really low risk for them, and then they could make that available to you as the employee. Now, what the thing is, the employer, for example, doesn't want to be left with your pink Lotus or your, fully blinged up a Moda when you leave the company. And so actually we have an offering, as part of the offering, they can hand back a certain number of cars every year at no early termination costs. For example, that's how we would make it easy for the employer. So we set that up, and we had been doing it a little bit with these broking partners, these other leasing partners. Actually, I remember going into lockdown, and just 2 weeks before lockdown, we did this article with the Daily Mail. So This is Money, which is part of the Daily Mail. And I was the only person quoted, and it was all about salary sacrifice, and it ended up on the homepage of the Daily Mail.
Wow.
And we ended up with 2,000 leads in 2 weeks. We had one B2B salesperson at the time. He was on holiday. and as he got back, he still works, by the way, at Octopus EV. As he got back, I was like, Jake, before you open your laptop, we just need to have a chat before you open up. We're using Pipedrive. Like, when you're starting out, you're just using off-the-shelf technology. And we had Pipedrive to manage our leads. I was like, before we open Pipedrive, we just need to have a chat about what you're going to find in there. But don't worry, we've got a plan. And so we just brought on a couple of other people that were doing consumer sales at that point. And so we were like quickly training them up on salary sacrifice so they could start talking to our business clients as well. We found a couple of temp staff as well that could then come on board, that could then help educate some of the clients. But the key problem we had was we had this strategic leasing partner that we were setting up with, and their systems weren't ready. And so I was like speaking to our key board member at that partner. And I was like, hey, we're ready to go. We've got 2,000 leads. Let's go. We can make a massive impact now. Some of these have thousands of employees. We can go and change the world. Let's go. And he's like, yeah, 2 weeks, Fiona, 2 weeks. And every like week I speak to him, 2 weeks, we're 2 weeks away, 2 weeks. And then lockdown happened. So this like, March 2020, lockdown happened. And then all of the leasing companies stopped funding on any new cars. They just stopped taking on new business and like started figuring out how to get even computers to their team members that were working at home, because you remember at that point, so many people just came to the office and they left again. They didn't have laptops at home, so they couldn't even operate at that point. So that leasing company that we were partnering with just stopped anything. So we're like, okay, we've got all of these warm customers. We'll just move them into what we kind of describe as a holding pen. We'll keep them, we'll look after them. If they need cars right now, we'll find other routes to do it. If they also were going through their own things, as we all were at that point. So many of those clients at that point also went on hold. So we're like, okay, when you're ready and we're ready, we'll come back and we'll get this sorted out. And then basically when the leasing company did come back and started getting active, it took them another 3 months to get the systems up and working and get people running on them. And then when they could set up 3 companies a week. And we had all of these companies wanting to set up this offering. It's just not going to work. So in the meantime, we'd had one of my team members was like, we're just going to have to set up a leasing company. So she's like, onto Google, how to set up, we joke, but actually how to set up a leasing company on Google. Like, how do you do this? And we had to find like technology platforms so that we could support customers. We found one innovative one and they had a contract that was working for them. So this really great guy, Chris Joyce, if he's listening, who had loads of experience of setting up tech platforms for leasing companies. We were like, fantastic, Chris, do you want to come and help us? And so he joined us as a contractor, then he joined us as a permanent member of the team. But actually, one of the things Amy and I were chatting about earlier is the value of finding great people. Mm-hmm. And Chris had all of the experience of having done that before, but he had so much patience with us that we could ask him any question and he would just calmly and patiently answer, and so kindly, when some of those questions must have felt so noddy to him, but he was just really calm and just really took time to help bring us all up to speed. And so he was super valuable and important in us setting up that business. And, he's now running another business himself, and he was such a great member of the team. But there's so many people along the journey that brought these kind of skills. So he was just one. Claire Miller, who many of the EarthSet group will know, she was running our vehicle to grid program, which we haven't really talked about, but that was kind of helping demonstrate vehicle to grid at a residential scale across the UK. But at the same time, I was like, can you help us figure out other tech? I've got another somewhat funny story where when we first started selling cars, we had a phone. We didn't have a phone system. We had a phone.
A single phone.
Mm-hmm. That the phone number used to go into, because we were like, we just needed to get up and running. So I needed a phone number. So we got a phone and the phone number went into the phone. And it was like a Nokia phone. And actually it got called the Batphone. And then we ended up with have a few more team members. And the Batphone used to sit in the middle and it would ring. But it hadn't become a priority to fix. When you're starting out, you're like, what is the number one priority thing that I need to fix today? What's the thing that I need to prove to test whether or not this business is going to work? And it hadn't been a priority thing to fix. Anyway, obviously overnight, we also needed a phone system because we obviously couldn't take the phone around to each other's houses for lockdown. Like, you're going to have the phone today. Yeah. So anyway, the Batphone, it got nicknamed the Batphone. There's a bat stuck on the back of the Nokia. It's now in a 3D frame in the office, the Batphone, the original Batphone. But actually, I think our phone system still gets called the Batphone today. And it's like, you're staffing up the Batphone, making sure that people are going to be available to pick it up. Anyway, I guess the key message there was also partly that you solve what you need to solve. The purpose of a startup, from my perspective, is you're demonstrating product market fit. When you get to being a much bigger corporate, you're optimizing for very different things. Maybe it be for optimizing to take out cost or other things in the market. Whereas when you're like literally just starting out, you're like, do customers want my product? I think there's a product here. Do other customers want it? And if I do, if they do, what do they want? Can I get the pricing to make it attractive? And then how do I get it to as many of them as possible to make their lives as good as possible?
Was there any point where you were kind of going, this is not going to work? Was there any point where you were really knocked back and you were like, you know what, maybe this EV thing's not quite what I thought it was going to be? And is there a point where you kind of, and anything that took you over that hump period?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say like necessarily. I always thought EVs were going to be a thing, but I'm not a salesperson. I've never sold things. I mean, I came from an engineering and consulting background. I like my spreadsheets. Spreadsheets don't sell. But I also, has anyone read the book Drive by Daniel Pink? And it talks around like, you know, employee empowerment and like what motivates people. And it says you shouldn't have, basically one of the messages, you shouldn't have commission schemes. His point is you should pay people well enough to get them really motivated and engaged. And then you can have rewards, unexpected rewards to motivate people rather than if this, then that rewards. Like if you hit this target, then you get this payment. Actually, over time, people want more money. They don't engage on the actual problem. They engage on the commission scheme, all these kind of things. So I was like, we're not going to have a commission scheme. And we weren't selling anything. We just weren't selling anything. And then 1 month I was like, okay, well, look, if you guys sell like 5 times more than you've ever sold, I'm going to give you some commission. And if you double it, I'll double it again. And do you know what? They didn't just hit the number, they doubled it in that first month. Do you like,
okay.
Yeah, that was a lesson.
Yeah.
I'm still intrigued as to like how you can try and motivate people in the kind of Daniel Pink view, because I kind of buy into the methodology. But, you know, there was just a point where I was like, we're just not really selling anything. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, okay. And then we doubled it again the next month. And then we doubled it again.
Wow.
And then it just started going. And actually, once you've done it, but it didn't double continuously. What happens as well is you go 2 steps forward and then 1 step back. So it's like what we describe as like a watermark. It's not a hockey stick. You like hit a new watermark, you know that you can do it, and then you go back. And then you kind of like hit a new level, and then you know you can do it, you go back. And it kind of carries on doing that. But each time that you hit a new level, well, you know you can do it now. You might not be able to do it immediately again the next month, but you know you can get there. You've done it before.
When you've been doing all this for the last kind of 5 years, what is the characteristic that you have either got yourself or that you have developed that you would say you relied on most as a founder to get you through, or that you think is the one thing that is the kind of the skill that gets you going, okay, that is the thing that has been really important for me?
Can I do 3?
Yes.
One of those, I think, is problem solving. So I think you're continuously problem solving when you're setting up a business and you're figuring out what works and what doesn't. And so each 6 months, I'd say my job changed where like it was different problems that we were having to solve. And the second thing is I really developed an appreciation of looking after your team and also setting the tone where you're looking after each other. And actually, I think Greg did this first with us in Octopus Energy across the group. And he was like, Fiona, it's person before the problem. Like when something goes wrong, the reality is that somebody's going to be feeling really bad that that's gone wrong in the first place. So therefore, you don't want to beat up on anyone because something's gone wrong. Even if you're feeling stressed about it, they're both feeling bad. So look after the person and then you can figure out what to do about the problem. The final one, interestingly, is like finding something you're really, truly passionate about. Because I think somebody else actually in my team once said to me, Fiona, on your harder days, does it make a difference that you fundamentally think that this is helping make the world a better place? And I think it does. I think it did make a difference for me when I was going through the tough times, which is like, actually, I think this is helping to look after our planet for future generations that have no influence or control on anything we're doing just now, but they're going to have to live with those consequences. I think that matters. And it really motivates me to get up in the morning and tackle some of those tougher situations and get through it. And it was really intriguing for my team member who didn't share that side, and therefore he didn't have the same kind of motivation. So I think that was quite meaningful. I realised, by the way, having told you that we weren't really selling much and we were selling a few cars here or there and we couldn't set up our businesses. Do you want to know the latest on where we've got to?
Go on, tell us.
All right. So we have now over 7,000 business clients set up with Salary Sacrifice. Wow. We have delivered over 35,000 cars. We have taken over 40,000 orders. In the time that I was there, I've been on sabbatical early this year, but until the end of last year, we had raised over £1.4 billion to be able to fund those cars. And we are now also doing direct-to-consumer leases, and we have partnerships with car manufacturers like BYD to be able to do kind of cutting-edge vehicle-to-grid programs as well, so that we can now use those batteries as part of that beautiful energy system.
Fabulous. Well, congratulations. Very, very well done. And thank you. And I think very inspiring for us.
It's been a really exciting day so far, so much energy, and we're in an amazing setting. My biggest takeaway today is don't underestimate how you could support a founder or a startup, even if you haven't worked in their space, even if you're not a functional expert. Sometimes asking the right question can really help them unlock the answer to that question they've been wrestling with.
My takeaway is I feel that the community is very supportive, and I feel motivated to work on the problems that I'm passionate about. I have made some meaningful connections, so I'm very excited to get back to work after this event.
My biggest takeaway, Earthset Build has put on this fantastic series of webinars. We've been able to hear from experts from the legal side of setting up your startup, through fundraising, through marketing and route to market. And it was brilliant to hear from other founders, to learn from other founders, and to just be inspired by other founders.
My biggest takeaway from today was from the pitches, and many of my colleague founders would talk about a problem, talk about the solution they have, and they would quantify like the size of the pain point, etc. And that kind of makes it really kind of tangible to people and tangible what the business opportunity is.
So it was a real privilege to be asked today by Fiona and Amy, who run Earthset, to join as a mentor, really all aimed at what Earthset is all about, which is helping startups to go further, faster. We've gone through everything from workshops where we were helping people prep their pitches, to helping them with their latest challenge, and then the end of the day culminated in a really brilliant pitch practice. And so for me, meeting so many inspired founders who are on such a mission to do different things is always just such a joy to be around.
So thank you for joining us for our Earthset podcast that we've been recording here today at the Blue Garage with our founders. We've had such a great afternoon.
Yeah, so this is the finale of Earthset Build, which is our founder series where we're trying to give as much information to all the founders in the Earthset team. We've had webinars covering things like PR and legal and product market fit, and then we brought everybody into Blue Garage today to have some direct mentoring one-on-one and to help them learn how to pitch and to really sell their business. It's been a fantastic afternoon. We've had an inspiring speech from Fiona. We've had lots going on. I'm exhausted, but it's wonderful.
And don't forget to join us as well for our next episode. We will be at the Bain offices in London, where we are interviewing Neil Shearing.
He's got a fantastic book called The Fractured Age. It's all about how geopolitics is fracturing the global economy. And we're going to be talking specifically about how that affects the climate proposition, clean technologies, infrastructure and supply chains. It's going to be really good.
And if you've enjoyed this, please don't forget to subscribe.